everybody. Welcome to part three of Meet the PhDs with Ananya. And Ananya, welcome again for the third time. And let's discuss more about your perspectives and insights on your PhD. So, what is one PhD myth that you want to discuss about today?
I think I'm going to like burst a bubble that all PhD students are living in.
Okay.
But so I think like as a master's student or even like undergraduate student, I used to look at PhD students and be like, oh my god, they're so smart, they know everything, and like any questions they get asked, they're able to answer and stuff. And then now as a PhD student, I can like say, okay, we don't know everything.
Yeah, we don't have anything figured out.
No, we are like constantly learning, and
Yes.
like you don't often see people who are like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know, right? And I think this myth of, especially for people who are like trying to get into research, like this myth of seeing people and thinking, oh my god, they know everything and they have like so much knowledge about everything and they're able to answer every question that's given to them. Not true. Because like the people who are asking them questions are not necessarily coming from the same backgrounds as them.
True.
Right? Like if you come and sit within like our lab meetings and see, okay, everyone is from the same background, and then you see like these PhD students and even PIs get asked questions from like these set of people who are in the same field, like that's when you realize, okay, there's still so much left to learn. There's um and like in every other setting that you would see a PhD student or like anyone in research, people who are asking them questions are probably not from the same field or probably not doing the same kind of research. So their questions are just out of curiosity.
Yes.
And so, like, it is so easy for us to answer questions when the questions are just out of curiosity and you're trying to like explain something to someone that they don't know about. But once you're like faced with people who know exactly what you're talking about, I think that's when it's so important to like accept that it's a constant learning process.
Yeah.
And like it shouldn't be intimidating to talk to a PhD student or talk to any researcher. And like to be a researcher, you shouldn't look at these people and like think that they know everything and that's not something I can do.
Yeah, it's a very it's a constant learning process, as you said, because in our lab setup, it's a different, very different setup where we have even clinicians who are part of our lab group, and within the lab we have different senior researchers who are working on very different projects. So one of them is working on the space gravitational force and all these aspects. The other one is working on biomechanics. We in our group, we work on chronic pain and also the emotion part of it. The other people, they're working on different methods of chronic pain. So it is so diverse within the same group that I have in fact observed our lab head asking some very basic questions. But as you mentioned, it was out of curiosity and not out of like just pinpointing somebody that they don't know it or they themselves don't know it. But it's very important to understand that if you don't know it, it's good to ask and learn and move on. So that is one attitude that our PhD somehow trying to teach us. And this is also something that I also noticed in the last 1 year, that it is fine if you don't know stuff.
Exactly.
And it's just good if you go and approach people and ask them, tell me more about it. I want to know more about it.
And like I think even in like environments where you're getting asked questions and you're expected to like have a vast knowledge about your topic, I think a lot of the times it is still okay to say I don't know, because people around you also understand where you are and that you are also constantly learning. And if you been asked a question, now you know, okay, this is important and maybe I should be learning about these things. So I think people around you also understand that like they're not expecting you to know everything So it's okay to say, I don't know. I will look into this. Yeah.
Very important point. Yeah. Okay. And then, if given a chance to decide again, will you still choose to do a PhD?
I think you should ask me this after I've finished my PhD. Because right now, I think I would absolutely say yes, that I would
At this
still
point of
do
time.
a PhD. But then, yeah, if my career like trajectory completely changes after my PhD, maybe like I would be like, oh, maybe the PhD wasn't that important for me or something like that. But I don't think I would still. It wouldn't be like a regret that if my career completely changed, I don't think I would regret doing the PhD either way.
Okay, yeah. And so we're talking about what we learned during our PhD. So, what is something non-academic that your PhD has taught you?
I think maybe multitasking, and like I think because for me in the lab, it's like I'm working on multiple like experiments at the same time, and like I have to like maybe I have to do like one experiment in the morning and then switch to another in the afternoon and then go back to the same experiment in the evening, and then when I like on the next day I have like only 15 minutes to like continue one experiment. So I think like like multitasking, and I'm able to like get that out into like my real life also, that I can like if I'm doing something and I feel like, oh, maybe like, oh, I have like a 10-minute break in this, maybe I'll just go start like I'll go start the oven or quickly put something in the oven and then come back, so that I'm not waiting until this task is done
to do the other task.
Next task.
Okay. Yeah, it's nice that you're applying that from your PhD to your life. So like a reverse way. Yeah. Okay.
And like I think I've discussed this with multiple people. So I think like people who work in labs would really sort of understand. So like for example, opening tubes, right? So we have to open tubes with one hand.
I can relate to this
and
one. Yeah.
So now I find myself opening all bottles
with
one hand.
Yeah.
I will be
especially if you're walking in the hood, right? So you get used to opening the bottles with one hand.
And so like in real life, like outside the lab, I have water bottles and maybe bottles of some sauces or something at home, and like unconsciously I'm just opening it with one hand, and sometimes I'm struggling so hard and like people around me are like, what are you
Why
doing?
don't you open it in a normal way?
And I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize this. And like I think, and like when I say this to like other people who work in labs and especially in hoods where you have to maintain sterility, everyone immediately gets it and finds it so relatable, and they're like, oh my god, like I do that all the time. And it's really funny that how like sort of you can like consciously affect your daily life, but also like unconsciously so many things from your PhD are coming.
They get carried over, right? Yeah. I remember there was this one point of time in my life when I was doing this, but that was during the time when I was working on cells, and now I don't do it anymore because it's a very different topic now, and the techniques are different. But I can relate to you from that point of time in my life.
I'm sure I'm sure people in every field of research have certain quirks that they get into like their usual life. So I think
Okay. And so who should do a PhD? We've been discussing this indirectly in some questions, but if you had to tell, there's no black and white answer for this one too, but what is your opinion of probably one or two characteristics that somebody should have, or if as a PI in the future, if you have to select somebody, what are the things that you would look forward for?
I think like your curiosity for a particular topic should be like number one, because if sure, like today I could be interested in some topic, but if my curiosity is not carried forward and like continuous, then I think it's like quite difficult to like do the same topic for multiple years on end. So, and like I'm sure a lot of PhD students face this because um, like like when they start their PhD, their questions are really interesting.
Yeah.
But then as they go on with their research, maybe like some things haven't worked, and like maybe the path changes, and somehow the questions aren't fulfilling for them anymore. And yeah, and like in those cases, like I think you have to just go back to like, are you still curious about these questions? And if you aren't anymore, then like the excitement just gets taken out of it, and now it just becomes like
a
job that
monotonous,
you're
a
doing.
robot, as if a robot is working on these just to finish the task, right?
And I think the second thing is patience, like not only with your research but with yourself. That like yeah, it's going to take time for you to learn new things. It's going to take time for you to get some results, and all of that is fine. And like how my PhD looks may be completely different to like maybe someone else in my own lab, or
not to compare ourselves. Which is very true, but also very hard because you see them every day.
Exactly.
If they publish a paper, you're like, wow, they've published a paper, and you also want to do it someday. So
but yeah, I think like just being patient with yourself and your research helps a lot. And like yeah, I think if you're in general, and like I'm sure even if you aren't a patient person, your PhD is going to teach you to be patient, because like it just, you just have to be patient.
Yeah, and I have mentioned this like I think multiple times even during these interviews while the discussions, but we depend on so many different factors. Like this whole pandemic, this happened, and we didn't know about it, but we had to somehow like reprioritize or customize our experiments or whatever depending on what was happening around. And not just that, but if your cells are not behaving in the manner that you want them to behave, or your animal models, then you have to also like, I don't know, just depend on them so much. Also, if somebody else booked a slot for your MRI scanning session and you couldn't get that day, then how are you going to settle for that? So true, it teaches you patience. Still a lot of years for us to learn patience.
Like I was talking to a friend of mine who is a software developer, and so like I had come to the lab quite early one day, and because I had to start an experiment, and so my friend in the evening asked me, oh, did the experiment work? And I was like, I don't find out whether it worked until next week. Like I have started the experiment today, but then I have to wait like 5 days for me to find out what happens with this experiment. And my friend was like, I could never deal with that, because like with like computers and stuff, everything is so fast and instant, and you get like results within half an hour or like even an hour or something like that. But then that's the difference, right? Like, and of course, like this just happens to be my PhD, where I have experiments that take 7 days, 10 days, 24 days sometimes. And of course, like in different PhDs, the experiment itself may not require patience, but
the whole process, right?
Exactly.
Because you have to first, even if you're dealing with human participants, you have to first test them, and that would take like, I would say, minimum 6 months to test them, or 1 year. And after that you have their data, and then you analyze it, and then maybe you hypothesize something, and then everything is just against that. So how are you going to tackle that? But then again, there comes different aspects of, if it's not just that your hypothesis is right or wrong, but how you put it forward also, because something, it is just a hypothesis, so you have to consider that it could be right, it could be wrong, want to add something there?
No.
Okay. And we've been talking about a little bit about, allocating, prioritizing, and deciding for ourselves what fits right. So, what is something that you do in your free time when you're also when you're not working on your PhD?
I think I like to read a lot. So, like, I have to do a lot of reading for my
Anyways,
PhD anyway.
Yeah.
But then that's why, like, I think when I read, I like to read a lot of fiction, and like weirdly enough, like the fiction that I like to read is like based on like medicine and stuff. So then, like somehow I find biology sort of coming into my my reading. But yeah, I think I really like reading a lot, and so like now I'm like trying to make it a point to read like every day for some time before I go to sleep. Because otherwise I will just not like actually sit and read a book, because when I think we're like younger, we can like pick up a book and start reading it and just not stop and like finish the book within a day. But I don't have such time anymore.
True.
So yeah, I think I really like to read, and then recently I've sort of discovered like this whole new love for cooking and baking, and like sort of creating my own recipes and things like that. So yeah, that's something that I'm doing a lot more these days.
That's good. Yeah. And let's just discuss this very critical question. So, what is your take on mental health and PhD? Because nowadays we also have a lot of research article talking about this aspect, and this is one of the very hot topics. That and you as a PhD, what is your take on that?
Yeah, so I think it's so important, because not only can your PhD affect your like your daily life and your mental health, but then your daily life can affect your mental health, and that could affect your PhD, right? So I think it's so important to like pay attention to what is like sort of good for your mental health and bad for your mental health. What kind of interactions with people that you're having on a regular basis make you feel good, and maybe make you feel extremely exhausted and make you feel very tired. And yeah, so I think like it's so important. And yeah, so and like personally, I deal with a lot of like anxiety, and I've been quite an anxious person like my whole life. And so recently I decided to start like counseling, and it's been helping me a lot. And I think like this, we need to really remove like the stigma behind asking for help.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people, and not just in our field, like in research, right? But in general, people find it quite difficult to say that, okay, I'm struggling with this and I need help. And it doesn't have to be anything serious, right? It can just be that, like, oh, I'm struggling to like wake up on time in the mornings. I'm struggling to be on time to meetings and stuff like that. And talking to someone, trying to figure out why exactly you're struggling to do these things can help you in so many ways, right? And like, okay, is it because you're not able to sleep? Maybe if you if you go to sleep at 12 usually, and then you're not able to be on time for your meetings, then they like you can sort of try to figure out, okay, I'm going to try to go to sleep by 11 instead of 12, and I'm going to make that a priority, that I go to sleep in earlier. So and these are just small things, and it doesn't have to be big problems for you to ask for help. But there are people out there who have more experience. There are people out there who can help you. So you should ask for help if you need it. And yeah, so I think since I started counseling, I think it's been like so helpful for me, because I'm able to recognize certain behaviors that were sort of making me more anxious, right? And I'm able to recognize that, okay, yeah,
Mhm.
when certain behaviors start, I know that okay, there's something that's happened around it that's making me feel very
True.
nervous and
Mhm.
making me feel very anxious. So I can immediately sort of recognize it and think, okay, what exactly happened and why is it important to me right now?
Mhm.
And yeah, so I think in general, we should pay a lot of attention to our mental health and do anything and like and everything in our power to sort of help ourselves.
Mhm.
And if that may be making it a priority to work out every day, making it a priority to maybe dance every day or watch videos that make you happy and or meditate every day, right? Whatever it is that you need to make your mental stress a little bit lower for
Mhm.
yourself and not putting like pressure on yourself that
Yeah, be
I'm
yeah, there's this concept of self compassion, which
yeah.
is really important.
Yeah, and I think like in our field, I think there's so much pressure to be productive all the
Mhm.
time. And
Yeah,
like if I take
efficient.
if I take
Yeah,
out 1 hour out of my day to like to go for a dance class,
you feel guilty about
yeah,
it.
you
Yeah, yeah.
we should take out that guilt for
Out.
taking care of ourselves,
Yeah, yeah.
and especially if these are the things that help our mental health, right?
Yeah. And I think this is not just for PhDs,
Yeah.
but in general, as a person, even if you're working in a software
Yeah.
company or in an MNC, we often try associating ourselves with the label that we get as whatever, like general manager, whatever. But then for sure, we are more than that. We have more essence as a human being.
Yeah.
We have more things that we could achieve, not just as what you are in that company or in that field. Yeah. Okay. And how does your PhD work affect your private life? Because we're still talking about the mental health, and this spans over. So, yeah, just want to finish this interview with this question.
I think so. Most of the times I try to not let it affect my relationships with like people who I care about.
Yeah.
Right? If I have decided that on Sundays at 3 p.m. I want to be on a call with my family, I'm going to make sure that 3 p.m. till 4 p.m. is free.
Okay.
I'm actively going to make sure that I don't have experiments planned at that time and I have that time free, right? And if I've decided to meet some friends in the evening and like if I've decided from before about this, I try to make sure that like it's not my PhD isn't like sort of making me cancel all these things last minute. And if I've decided with them that I'm going to meet them, maybe I will go meet them and then say, okay, like maybe like in an hour or two, I really have to go back to the lab for this thing for like 5 minutes and then we can like continue or something like that. And I really, really try to not let my PhD affect like my personal relationships and everything. But how my PhD affects my mental health is still quite there because like even like any interactions that you have with your PI, your lab mates, could like motivate you, demotivate you, and make you feel like you're not enough and you're not doing that well,
Okay.
and things like that. And so that's something that I'm still like struggling with a little bit to sort of not let like my interactions with people in my lab affect my like my mental health and stuff like that a lot. But yeah, for the most part, I try to not let it affect it. Yeah.
I'm glad that at least you shared this very openly because, first of all, recognizing that you are going through this, and second point is being open about it. And through this, it's good that you're telling people what you feel, because the whole point of having these interviews is to tell people that it's not what we see on paper, but rather it's a human being undergoing that experience. So it's very interesting that you took out your time and told us what you feel about and which issues are important from your from your point of perspective. So yeah, I would like to thank you for that.
Of course.
I mean, yeah, I'm very glad that we did this in person.